A $4,500 trip to a Houston strip club. That is just one of the questionable expenses that the Port of Oakland is scrambling to explain tonight after a KTVU investigation first raised questions about the spending of port officials. KTVU's Eric Rasmussen is live at the Port of Oakland where commissioners are working on damage control. Eric?
And Frank, we've been asking the port to talk to us about this for months. Now, in the last 30 minutes, a spokesperson did come out here, gave us a very basic statement that the port is looking into all of this, but commissioners are getting ready to resume a closed-door meeting here that actually started on Friday. And it all stems from our questions about these expenses of the maritime director of the port who traveled the world, racking up a huge tab on the port's dime. On a Tuesday in Houston, the Port of Oakland's Director of Maritime, James Kwan, was one of the big spenders at the Treasurer's Gentlemen's Club. KTVU uncovered the almost $4,500 receipt in more than 1,000 pages of expenses we obtained through the California Public Records Act. The receipt includes Kwan's own handwriting, noting he paid for 12 people, a delegation of executives from Hyundai and Burlington Northern Santa Fe, a railroad company. Yet BNSF tells KTVU it checked its travel records and says it has no record of any executives being in Houston, not to mention a strip club at that time.
We will now go into closed session at the hour of 5:48. Thank you.
Despite our repeated requests for comment, we were there Friday when port commissioners held an emergency meeting and then voted to go behind closed doors to talk about our story without talking to us. Now, the bill from the strip club was just one of many questionable expenses that we uncovered while going through these thousands of pages of documents. We're putting that together for 10, along with the extra money the port has now decided to spend just to deal with our inquiry. We're live here in Oakland. Eric Rasmussen, KTVU Channel 2 News.
$4,500 spent at a Houston strip club. That is just one of several questionable expenses billed to the Port of Oakland by a high-ranking official. A 2-month investigation by KTVU first uncovered the surprising spending. And now there are new questions about who was benefiting. KTVU's Eric Rasmussen is live now in Oakland, where the port just finished an emergency meeting. Eric.
Right, Julie. The meeting adjourned a little more than 2 hours ago. The port would only say it's hiring an attorney to look into these unusual expenses. Now, we've been going through them for the past few weeks, and we discovered this bill for that strip club in Houston is just the tip of the iceberg. For at least one night, Treasurer's Strip Club in Houston is where the Port of Oakland's maritime director, James Kwan, claimed he was doing business. KTVU uncovered a $4,300 receipt from the Gentlemen's Club and another $155 in tips while reviewing more than 1,000 pages of expenses obtained through the California Public Records Act. But it's what Kwan wrote on that receipt that's raising new questions. In town for an intermodal conference, he claimed it was a dinner reception for 12 people, part of a delegation of executives from Hyundai and Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad. When we asked about it, BNSF said it had no record of any executives being in Houston at the time.
Eric with Channel 2.
Can you talk to us about these expenditures?
No comment.
Did you think Mr. Kwan was doing business there at that strip club? Kwan's boss, Omar Benjamin, and other port officials continued to dodge us tonight, and there are more questionable expenses even they might not know about. Our investigation found Kwan made frequent trips to a barber shop in Taipei. In 2009, he was reimbursed almost $500. Kwan spent thousands during 4 separate visits to the 678 International Club, a high-end restaurant and massage parlor in Shenzhen, China. At home and abroad, Kwan repeatedly billed the port for golf outings, $1,000 or more at a time. He was even able to get reimbursed for $324 Echo golf shoes like these. At Bevmo in Oakland, Kwan racked up nearly $1,000 on his port-issued credit card, buying 50 bottles of this dessert wine.
The types of expenses that you've uncovered really seem not only out of the ordinary, but really ethically questionable.
Assistant Professor Jo Ellen Posner researches organizational misconduct at Berkeley's Haas School of Business. She was troubled to learn this isn't the first time KTVU has investigated questionable spending at the Port of Oakland. In 2008, former Port Commission President Darlene Ayers Johnson spent tens of thousands of dollars on first-class flights and tickets to the Lion King and Disney on Ice.
The fact that these problems are recurring indicates that there's more than a cultural gap here, right? There's a cultural gap, there's an oversight gap, there's really a kind of lack of internal structure within this organization.
Why do you think that is, that the board didn't know about any of these expenses?
We have been taking action to strengthen our policies precisely because we knew that there were issues that we needed to address.
Outside the port today, we found the head of the port's public relations who'd been declining our request for an interview for the last 2 weeks.
And that's all we can say at this time.
What about $500 at a barber shop in Taipei?
I'm not
Did you know
aware-
about it?
I'm not aware of that expense, and as I said,
How about
at this point-
$300 for a
At this point,
golf
that's all we
shoes?
can say at this time.
There could be more expenses the port isn't sharing. When we asked officials for an internal audit prepared for the port last July, they refused to give it to us. We also reached out to Oakland Mayor Jean Quan for this story. Tonight, her office said it's waiting to see what comes out of these closed-door meetings here at the port before it makes a comment. We're live in Oakland. Eric Rasmussen, KTVU Channel 2 News.
Tonight's so-called emergency meeting of the Port Commission held behind closed doors may be a violation of state law and subject to an investigation by the district attorney. The Port Commission called the first closed-door emergency meeting last Friday night under a false premise of, quote, pending litigation. Instead, the port hired a $400 an hour public relations crisis consultant and brought him into that closed-door meeting. First Amendment lawyer James Wagstaff said today the commission could be breaking the law.
The moment you have someone who's not a lawyer and is not part of the lawyer team, that gives you some concern that perhaps they're using this as a cover to prevent the public from knowing what's going on.
Oakland Port Commissioners once again refused to comment.
Complete Bay Area news coverage starts right now. This is the 10 o'clock news on KTVU Channel 2.
We are outraged. We are outraged. The media has exposed what we've known all along. The media has exposed what we've known all along.
Union workers confront Port of Oakland officials tonight, prompting the board to adjourn this evening's meeting. All of this coming after we uncovered questionable expenditures by a port executive. Good evening, everyone. I'm Frank Somerville.
And I'm Julie Hayner. The executive director of the Port of Oakland was put on administrative leave tonight following a KTVU News investigation of port spending. Our report this past Monday revealed that the port's maritime director spent thousands of dollars at a strip club, massage parlor, on liquor purchases, golf outings, and a barber shop. Our coverage continues tonight. KTVU's Jana Katsuyama is live now at the port, where there was an explosive outcry tonight as port workers confronted board members. Jana.
Julie, the boardroom was packed. Staff actually had to bring in extra chairs to accommodate people, but one seat was conspicuously empty. Omar Benjamin's the executive director. The meeting started about an hour and a half late. Workers took over the meeting and shouted their frustration.
We are outraged.
SEIU Local 1021 workers were livid addressing the port commissioners tonight.
The media has exposed what we've known all along.
The workers held signs showing they're upset about questionable executive spending, while they say the port insists on worker contract concessions. The union shut down the meeting, shouting as the commissioners left the room.
Enough! Enough!
We've asked them to clarify their finances, and they just kind of wring their hands.
Sources tell KTVU the board voted unanimously behind closed doors today to put Executive Director Omar Benjamin on paid administrative leave during their internal investigation, prompted by KTVU's inquiries about spending by the port's maritime director, James Quan. Bills including $4,500 at a strip club and other questionable charges.
We were all sort of taken aback and shocked at that expenditure, but again, we have an investigation going on, and I think we really need to get to the bottom of exactly what transpired in that one instance.
The board president would not comment about Mr. Kwan's status at first until we pressed her.
Today, is he in his current capacity as maritime director?
Correct. He is serving correct as of this moment. Yes.
Okay. When you heard about the expenditures by Mr. Kwan, what was your reaction?
I was disappointed. It gives the port a black eye, and that doesn't feel good.
The board president tells me the acting executive director will be responsible for addressing Mr. Kwan's job status, and the investigation is expected to wrap up in the next few weeks. Reporting live from the Port of Oakland, Jana Katsuyama, KTVU, Channel 2 News.
We have new revelations to tell you about tonight from our ongoing KTVU investigation into the spending of public money by top officials at the Port of Oakland. We've now uncovered hundreds of dollars in billed expenses at a late-night private room karaoke bar that some people suggest is actually a front for prostitution. Our first report has already led to the Port Commission putting 2 top executives on paid leave. In tonight's special report, KTVU's Eric Rasmussen questions spending by yet another port official.
For several nights, we recorded a parade of scantily clad women, many dropped off all at once from a minivan, going into this downstairs bar on 14th Street in Midtown Oakland. It's a familiar scene neighbors say they've been concerned about for years.
The first thing that I thought was that there's just too many of them to be waitresses in this place.
Cafe Juliet, a business that bills itself as a private room karaoke bar, is also where the Port of Oakland's international marketing manager, Lawrence Dunnigan, spent $550 last year. The receipt shows his credit card was charged at 1:44 in the morning. On his expense report, Dunnigan wrote it was a business meeting with 4 members of China Merchants, a large port operator in China who'd been in town for a trade symposium with local and national leaders.
Maybe we're like, what's going on down there? You know, is this like some kind of a weird prostitution thing going on?
When we visited the bar, a regular there told us, quote, "You can get girls here." In an online review for the same location, a customer said he was shown 6 women and was asked, "Which one do you want?"
Can you tell us what kind of business is being run here?
Karaoke bar.
We found the bar's manager, John, out front.
What about all the girls we see come in here every night?
You see any girl coming here right now?
Well, we've seen girls.
You know, this nightclub karaoke, that's so, like guy and female, we have a company for do the love connection here.
You have a love connection here?
Yes.
Is anybody paying to be with these girls?
No. No. That's what I know. I don't really know.
We discovered the receipt from Cafe Juliet while continuing our investigation that uncovered $4,500 spent at a Houston strip club by Port of Oakland Maritime Director James Kwan. Much like Kwan, we found Lawrence Dunnigan was also reimbursed for thousands of dollars, public money, spent at exclusive hotels overseas such as the Shangri-La in China and the St. Regis in Singapore. Same as Kwan, Dunnigan made repeat visits to the 678 International Club, a restaurant and massage parlor in Shenzhen, China.
Shouldn't the port have already known about some of these expenses?
There's certainly deep concern at the port, a mixture of shock and dismay, and that's why we're taking it so seriously. We're going to get to the bottom of this.
After dodging KTVU's questions for weeks, the port now cites an ongoing investigation.
We're going to get to the bottom of this matter.
And that is the answer the port's spokesman gave to almost every one of our questions.
Why would the port approve these expenses? Why reimburse them?
This is all part of the investigation. We're going to get to the bottom of the matter.
They're doing this because they think they can get away with it.
Marvin Brown is a professor of business ethics and author of a book called Corporate Integrity. He says changing the culture at the Port of Oakland goes beyond putting a few executives on paid leave.
Most people do what they think is right, considering the world they think they live in. So what these events tell us is the kind of world that's been created by the people managing the Port of Oakland.
As for Lawrence Dunnigan.
Mr. Dunnigan, this is Eric Rasmussen, a reporter with KTVU Channel 2.
We tried to reach him directly to hear his explanation for visiting this karaoke bar. We are still waiting for a response. In Oakland, Eric Rasmussen, KTVU Channel 2 News.
The Port of Oakland's acting executive director released a statement late this evening saying the port is aware of the latest questions about improper expenditures and is including them in its inquiry. Stay with KTVU as we continue to investigate the use of public funds by port officials. We will have a follow-up report tomorrow and bring you new developments as we uncover them.
More fallout tonight from our KTVU News investigation about questionable spending at the Port of Oakland, including hundreds of dollars at a private karaoke bar very late at night. Tonight, we're getting a lot of reaction to our extensive investigation, and KTVU's Eric Rasmussen is here with today's developments.
Frank, the port will only say it's investigating what we found, but union workers and even the mayor of Oakland are already weighing in. Neighbors told us they're concerned about what's going on at this karaoke bar on 14th Street in Oakland, where we recorded women in skimpy clothing being dropped off from a minivan night after night. It's also where the Port of Oakland's international marketing manager, Lawrence Dunnigan, spent $550 for a business meeting with members of a Chinese port operator.
We have a company for do the love connection here.
You have a love connection here?
Yes.
We asked Mayor Jean Quan about it today.
I texted Howard Jordan when I saw your report last night when we were at the ELC, and we'll look into it.
Our KTVU investigation already found $4,500 spent at a Houston strip club and other questionable expenses that's led to the Port Commission putting the Maritime Director and Executive Director on paid leave. Quan said she believes the Port Commissioners she's appointed will change the culture at the Port of Oakland.
I think in these areas you have to really show that you're using the public's funds well.
Our investigation also found on 2 consecutive nights in Taipei, Lawrence Dunnigan was reimbursed $1,500 for a business meeting at the Hung Sheng Lion Dance Theater and another $1,500 for what he labeled entertainment. Some say it's an acceptable part of doing business, but union workers locked in a contract battle with the port aren't convinced.
The arrogance that this is just something, I guess, the new way to do business, but it's not okay. It honestly isn't okay.
We have reached out to that executive, Lawrence Dunnigan, but we have not received a reply. While the port says it has no evidence of any criminal activity, it has hired an outside law firm to assist with its investigation. Eric Rasmussen, KTVU Channel 2 News.
Some members of the Oakland Police Department have taken an unusual interest in a private room karaoke bar, a place where they say they're doing nothing wrong, but neighbors worry could be involved in prostitution. KTVU first investigated the business after discovering a Port of Oakland official was reimbursed for spending public money there. Now, only on 2, KTVU's Eric Rasmussen with new video raising questions about what Oakland police officers are doing on the clock.
Over 4 nights, we watched the same scene play out at Cafe Juliet on 14th Street in Midtown Oakland. Each night, our camera recorded women in skimpy clothing filing into the downstairs business that bills itself as a private room karaoke bar. A minivan dropped off as many as 7 women at a time.
Maybe we're like, what's going on down there? You know, is this like some kind of a weird prostitution thing going on? Or
neighbor Anka Mashoyu and others say the scene we observed has been going on for years, but she told us it's not just the women and mostly male clientele that have her concerned.
We've seen a police officer kind of go in and out, sometimes at night, sometimes there's a police car parked out here for a couple of hours.
On our first night outside the bar, a marked Oakland police cruiser parked right in front of us. Moments later, we watched Sergeant Warren Young go inside. Shortly after he left, the women began arriving. The next night, Young's cruiser was back again, but it was another uniformed officer in another patrol car who parked and went inside. Officer Barry Coe made 2 visits to Cafe Juliet that night. The second lasted 27 minutes. As soon as Coe left, just before midnight, Sergeant Young returned. On his 3rd pass of the night, Young drove through the parking lot next to Cafe Juliet using his spotlight on the cars, just as we saw him do the night before.
Pardon me, Sergeant. Eric with Channel 2. Just a quick question for you. Cafe Juliet on 14th Street?
Yeah, what about it?
Why are you there night after night?
Because my friend works there.
Sergeant Young spoke to us outside Oakland Police Headquarters.
Are you doing this as a favor to your friend?
No. I said, my friend works there. Not owner, not anything else.
But is that the reason you're giving this what seems to be a lot of your
No, because
time?
I only go down there when I'm off, and I stay there for length of time.
Young offered a different explanation when we told him about our video of him visiting the bar in uniform during his shift.
Well, when I'm working, I do a security check there. Because what happens is that, can we talk off camera for a second and I'll tell you what's going on?
He said he couldn't elaborate because of an investigation, but Young insists there's nothing illegal happening inside Cafe Juliet.
Okay. And I had a regular tell me flat out, you can get girls here. Does that concern you to hear that?
No, that is completely untrue. Well, I can't say for the fact because I don't follow those people home, right?
Can you tell us what kind of business is being run here?
Karaoke bar.
We found the bar's manager, John, out front.
What about all the girls we see come in here every night?
See any girl coming here right now?
Well, we've seen girls.
Any police officer should know
as you and I should know what's going on in there. It's not singing karaoke.
We showed our video to former Alameda County Sheriff Charles Plummer. He says the Oakland Police Department should be questioning what its officers are doing here.
I would start an immediate investigation, absolutely, right now.
Plummer, with more than 50 years in law enforcement, doesn't believe we stumbled into an ongoing investigation.
If they were checking on this place, it wouldn't be a uniform that would be doing it, it'd be plainclothes people.
Oakland Mayor Jean Quan says she expects Police Chief Howard Jordan will investigate.
If he has this information, if he has these tapes, he will investigate it, and I have confidence that if there is any misconduct, that he will do the right thing.
So far, Chief Jordan has not responded to our repeated request to interview him, Officer Coe, or anyone with the department's command staff. In Oakland, Eric Rasmussen, KTVU Channel 2 News.
Continuing coverage now, the Oakland Police Department confirms that it has now opened an investigation after a KTVU special report found on-duty officers making late-night visits to a karaoke bar that offers private rooms. Now, KTVU's Eric Rasmussen is hearing from the police chief and community activists for the first time.
In an investigation that lasted several nights, we watched 2 Oakland police officers in uniform and on the clock making repeat visits to this private room karaoke bar on 14th Street, a place where our camera also recorded a minivan dropping off women in skimpy clothing night after night. Community activist Todd Walker is among those demanding answers from police.
Why are you there? I mean, are you there at the same time when somebody's losing their child out here on these streets?
He says his work as a youth football coach with at-risk kids and his job at a local funeral home have convinced him Oakland doesn't have enough police in areas where they're needed the most.
And while we losing all these kids and we burying all these kids, we picking these bodies up in these funeral homes, he's out here hanging around in a karaoke bar, riding through the parking lot. Ain't nothing going on in the parking lot. Ride through the neighborhood. Let these people see you.
One of the police officers seen in our video, Sergeant Warren Young, told us he has a friend at the bar and that his visits were to perform security checks. A regular patron at the bar told us private rooms rent for $200 to $500. And while Sergeant Young insisted there's nothing illegal going on, today Police Chief Howard Jordan released a statement to KTVU saying, "I take these allegations very seriously, and the department opened investigations as soon as the circumstances were brought to my attention. A complete review will determine whether the alleged on or off-duty conduct is in line with our policies and the department's core values, including trust, professionalism, and service. Because these are open investigations, I am limited in what can be discussed." Our questions about the spending of public money by Port of Oakland officials first led us to that karaoke bar. It is now also part of a larger investigation here at the port. In Oakland, Eric Rasmussen, KTVU Channel 2 News.
The growing scandal over the Port of Oakland's spending and accounting of public money took another bad turn today. The port's executive and maritime directors are currently on paid leave after our initial stories uncovering the documented irregularities, including charging the public $4,500 for a night at a Houston strip club. We also reported one of the 2 business clients who the top port officials said was at the club was in fact not there. Today, the second client on the document obtained by KTVU also said they were not present at the club. Hyundai Merchant Marine executive Brandy Andrews told us this morning that company travel records show no Hyundai employees were even in Houston at the time. Port officials declined to comment to KTVU, citing an ongoing investigation. Developing news tonight involving our KTVU investigation of spending at the Port of Oakland. Tonight, we have confirmed that the executive director of the port has turned in his letter of resignation. In the letter, Omar Benjamin said he is stepping down because of questions about the appropriateness of expense reimbursements present obstacles too great to overcome. Our KTVU investigation brought to light thousands of dollars in questionable expenses at a strip club in Texas and other expenses submitted by the port's maritime director, James Quan. Our investigation also uncovered Benjamin had been present at the strip club and that the port redacted his name from the receipt. In his resignation letter, Benjamin wrote, "Please note, I accept responsibility for my actions and those who worked under my leadership." We begin tonight with new information on that questionable spending at the Port of Oakland. It could go far beyond a $4,500 tab at a strip club in Houston. KTVU's Eric Rasmussen has been investigating spending at the port now for months and explains how a secret audit might reveal even larger problems.
While his name was initially redacted from this receipt, the Port of Oakland finally revealed Executive Director Omar Benjamin was with Maritime Director James Kwan when they spent more than $4,500 in public money at Treasure Strip Club in Houston. Benjamin abruptly retired, but we've learned there is much more questionable spending the port is keeping secret. In an internal audit we've been requesting for more than 3 months, KTVU has independently learned it contains $200,000 to $400,000 in questionable spending on travel and other expenses. A source who is familiar with the audit tells us as many as 11 port employees are involved. For the past 2 days, the Port of Oakland has declined our request for an interview, instead offering this written statement from Board President Gilda Gonzalez. The board is looking forward to completing its investigation as soon as possible and then taking appropriate action. Until then, we are pleased to be turning the page toward a new era of leadership, transparency, and accountability, and know there is more hard work ahead. As part of its investigation, the port hired 2 PR firms to handle the crisis, one charging $400 an hour. Port officials still won't tell us how much they are paying the second firm. The attorney for Maritime Director James Kwan defended some of his expenses. According to published reports, he says they've led to millions of dollars in business here at the port. The board expects to get an update on its investigation when it meets tomorrow. At the Port of Oakland, Eric Rasmussen, KTVU Channel 2 News.
We have new information tonight in our ongoing investigation of questionable expenditures by officials at the Port of Oakland, and it now seems what we previously found was just the tip of the iceberg. An internal audit we have now obtained shows $200,000 to $400,000 in questionable spending on travel and other expenses. And a source tells us that as many as 11 port employees are now implicated. Earlier this week, the port's executive director, Omar Benjamin, resigned following a KTVU report that linked him to a $4,500 tab at a Houston strip club that was expensed by the port's maritime director, James Kwan.
Truckers faced long delays today at the Port of Oakland, where operations were slow to recover from yesterday's strike. Truckers were backed up for hours waiting to pick up and drop off shipments. While port officials don't have any specifics about the economic impact from that one-day strike, they do say the port generates $8 million in economic activity on an average day. But a spokesman for the port says this is not an average week.
We're talking a busy week in general because of the holiday shipping season and the fact that we're facing, large harvest of numerous California agricultural products that we're trying to get out to market.
The longshoremen who load and unload ships refused to cross the picket line established yesterday by striking SEIU workers. The longshoremen tell us they will stand in support of fellow union workers no matter what time of year it is. In 6 minutes, our KTVU investigation of spending at the port goes deeper, plus the one piece of the puzzle they don't want us to see.
In tonight's special report, tens of thousands of dollars of public money spent on gifts, entertainment, and posh hotels. And new examples continue to surface, painting a troubling picture of how business is done at the Port of Oakland. Tonight, our KTVU investigation uncovers even more questionable expenses. And Eric Rasmussen asks, who's keeping tabs?
Watches, perfume, bracelets, silk ties, lip gloss, Godiva chocolates, and special blended Scotch whiskey. They're just some of the luxury items Port of Oakland Maritime Director James Kwan claimed he gave to international customers as gifts. With the help of Asian business experts, we went through stacks of receipts that turned out to be from gift shops, department stores, and five-star restaurants in China and Korea for hundreds, even thousands of dollars. There's no itemized list of what he bought in those instances, but the Port of Oakland reimbursed Kwan for almost every penny, just as it did for 5 years' worth of expenses.
Somebody's asleep at the wheel to not be keeping track of these expense reports and to not call this out a lot earlier.
Kelly McElhaney is the faculty director of the Center for Responsible Business at UC Berkeley. We first reached out to her after our KTVU investigation discovered Kwan and the port's executive director, Omar Benjamin, spent more than $4,500 at Treasure Strip Club in Houston in 2008. Benjamin abruptly retired within a month of our first report. In an email to KTVU, the attorney for James Kwan said his client did not take part in any adult entertainment. He also defended many of Kwan's expenses as a proper use of public money to entertain overseas customers such as Evergreen Shipping, which invested $30 million in new cranes at the port in 2010. Digging into the expenses of other port officials led us to Cafe Juliet in Oakland. Our investigation discovered the port's international marketing manager was reimbursed for more than $500 at this private room karaoke bar that neighbors suspect is a front for prostitution. McElhaney says the totality of the issues at the port go far beyond any one employee or expense and point to a deep-rooted problem.
I tend to work with Fortune 1000 businesses who would allow these sorts of things to happen the minute a receipt came in that was even questionable. The spender would be called in to be held accountable.
She says the buck stops with the Port of Oakland's Board of Commissioners. They are chosen by the mayor of Oakland and appointed by the city council.
I've had actually a struggle with the city council to get a stronger port commission. I felt that the commission needed people with more oversight skills.
Mayor Jean Quan is responsible for 6 of the port's 7 commissioners. The mayor pointed to the board when we asked her about the many questionable expenses our investigation uncovered.
I'm trusting that the new port commissioners that I've appointed will take care of this and will change the culture.
Perhaps just as troubling are the expenses the Port of Oakland has not shared with the public. Despite our repeated requests, it has refused to release an internal audit completed months ago. A source familiar with the audit says it identifies as many as 11 port employees and more than $200,000 in questionable spending on travel and other expenses.
It's a theory of cockroaches. If you find one, you rest assured there's 1,000 underneath that wall who will eventually come out. And it kind of reminds me of this story. I mean, it's not just one rogue receipt or questionable charge. They're pretty obviously questionable and multiple.
McElhaney and others insist the first step is to punish those responsible and then chart a new course toward better accountability. In Oakland, Eric Rasmussen, KTVU, Channel 2 News.
More details now. The 7 port commissioners preside over an operation that took in $311 million in revenue last year. After paying their debts, the commissioners returned $14 million to the city of Oakland. In all, port officials say $9.2 billion is pumped into the Bay Area economy each year by its operations. Critics suggest a mismanaged port can have a very negative effect on the entire Bay Area. Another top executive is gone from the Port of Oakland in the wake of our KTVU investigation of questionable spending of public money. KTVU's Noel Walker also tells us the port finally released an internal audit today that we've been asking them for months.
The Port of Oakland board members and staff met in special session today talking about more effective leadership. At the end of the session, they released these 2 internal reports detailing misuse of funds.
So why wait from July until today to release it?
We don't typically release audit reports.
The port's acting executive director told me it's a reflection of the port's transformation into a more transparent organization. The audit says some of the port's credit card holders skirted single transaction spending limits, that more than $67,000 in extravagant gifts might violate state and federal laws, that some unsubstantiated expenses expose the port to tax liabilities. The audit also details more than $194,000 in questionable expenses, including tickets to a U2 concert. It says stricter internal controls are needed to prevent abuses.
We're going to look at it, make sure that the mistakes of the past are not repeated.
The internal investigation addresses misuse of company credit cards by 2 top port officials at 2 strip clubs, one in Houston, previously reported by KTVU, and a second club in Minneapolis. The report specifically does not investigate Cafe Juliet, an Oakland karaoke club that a port official had receipts from and a KTVU investigation found was frequented by scantily clad women.
They looked at the role of port employees and whether port employees conducted anything that violated port policies, and they determined that that did not take place.
A port spokesman told me today the 2 men who racked up the strip club bills mentioned in this report have paid back more than $5,000. Also, one of those men, former Maritime Director James Quan, announced he's retiring. He'll get to keep his pension. At the Port of Oakland, Noel Walker, KTVU, Channel 2 News.
We have a major new twist to tell you about tonight in our investigation of the Port of Oakland and improper spending by its leaders. Less than a week after the port announced the retirement of its embattled maritime director, we've learned James Quan won't be leaving work there altogether. KTVU's Noel Walker is at the Port of Oakland tonight, where she's been asking how much Quan will continue to earn there. Noel.
Julie, KTVU has learned starting next year, James Kwan will continue to work with the port for a period of 7 months, essentially as a consultant. A port spokesman says Kwan will be a retiree annuitant, working to ensure transition of important maritime business relationships. This is the same James Kwan who earlier this month, along with former port executive director Omar Benjamin, agreed to pay back more than $5,000 they spent at strip clubs and charged to the Port of Oakland. We spoke via Skype with Kelly McElhaney, who teaches business ethics at UC Berkeley, about the wisdom of keeping Kwan on at the port.
Given the egregiousness of the allegations against him and his team, it seems a bit shocking that they would want to continue to associate with what I think is a damaged brand.
The port announced Kwan's retirement earlier this month. On the same day, it released an internal audit and investigation that revealed some of the port's credit card holders skirted single transaction spending limits, $67,000 in questionable gifts that may violate state and federal laws, and at least $50,000 in unsubstantiated expenses that may expose the port to tax liabilities. KTVU has learned Kwan will earn $109 an hour based on his $214,000 salary as maritime director. Kwan retires from the port with pension benefits, but it's unclear if he'll collect a pension and paycheck at the same time. Generally, the California Public Employee Retirement System doesn't allow retirees to collect a pension and continue to work for a public employer, but there are exceptions to what you might call double dipping. The retiree can't work more than 960 hours a year. Over Kwan's 7-month stint, that would average about 34 hours a week. And the retiree must have skills the employer needs.
How many hours a week is that really going to take? And is it really going to take 7 months to hand off relationships?
McElhaney says the port needs to be more transparent.
They need to tell the truth and tell it fast, because somebody else is going to tell their truth. You're doing it right now.
We tried to contact Kwan by phone for a comment but got no answer and no call back. Reporting live at the Port of Oakland, Noelle Walker, KTVU, Channel 2 News.